somebody sits there, chairs can control, but
They're both remote. Yeah.
but they haven't assigned a delegate.
It shouldn't be one. You can do it all remotely.
But how would the people? Oh, it's going to come out of it.
Right. They can just run it remotely.
Oh, well. Let's do it on. I'm going to do an audio check.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, we see you. Yeah, thanks. Sorry for the confusion. I got confused what was happening.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I got really confused on the chat. Do we need a delegate in person over there? I don't think so. Okay, well, hi everyone.
Hi, Sophia. Everything is good here. We can see you, we can hear you, we can see the
Oh,
slides.
okay.
So just go ahead.
Okay. Okay, hi everyone. So welcome to another session on IETF 121. So this is the HRPC research group. And hello, yes. And this session is being recorded, so just bear in mind. And as with every research group and also working group at the IETF and IETF, here is the note well, so please note it very well. We have a lot of procedures in place for code of conduct and also for conduct of the participants in the working group and research groups. So also note it really well. And just as a reminder, please make sure that if you're going to be queuing up, for example, please join the mic. And also keep the audio and video off if you're not using the on-site version. Yes, so this is just like some recommendations in any case. We have the agenda, and you already should be familiar with this, and I should have changed the title of this slide. Okay, so what is the agenda for today, which is 121? Sorry for that. On the first, we're actually just going to be talking about the Intimate Partner and Violence draft, which we have some updates, which I will be sharing in just a few minutes. And then we have two talks. Okay, we have two talks, which is going to be given by Jesse Lowell and also by Carl Janks. And with that, we will conclude. And with that, I think we're just going to go ahead with the slides itself. This is just a reminder of what our group is about. As you know, it's the Human Rights and Protocols Considerations. The website is up here in case you want to check us out. So I think I will go directly into my presentation, if that's okay with you, Mallory. Mallory is also remote, but she's also the co-chair. Okay, I'm going to share them now. Okay, great. So for everybody that has been following the group, we have had some drafts actually published as RFCs, but we also have other drafts that are currently being worked upon. And the one that we are deeply working on this research group is the Intimate Partner Violence Digital Considerations, which you can find either in the GitHub or the data tracker that I have put here on the slides. So as you know, we presented an IETF 114. We had an invited talk, and ever since then, we have had some subsequent invited talks on other versions or other meetings of the IETF to talk about the specific concern of actually also creating a threat modeling and preparing recommendations of the cases when technology is abused or intimate partner violence is enhanced via the misusage of technology. So we decided to create this specific document because of that. There has been a really lovely feedback on the list, which we have now incorporated in a version 01 that I just uploaded today in the morning. I incorporated all of the feedback that we have on the mailing list. Mostly what the feedback has been centered, and the big 2 points that have actually changed on the draft is both on the scope. So the scope now is very much narrow to the intimate partner violence case, which in the majority of cases means someone who has an intimate relationship with the person that they are attacking / abusing. There was some discussion about if we should actually also incorporate elder or child abuse in these cases, but we just decided to leave it as a line, but not really talk in detail about it, because that could be the subject of other drafts, because sometimes the attacks that are performed in these cases are a little bit different. And also Jens shared a specific point that we also included pretty much on the draft, which is also a clarification that the majority of the technology we are describing in this graph doesn't mean that they are inherently designed to be attack vectors, but rather it means that it is also misuse or used to enhance the abuse. So we kind of clarify that on the scope of the document. So for the people who provided the feedback, let us know when I post it back on the mailing list if now it is more correct with the understanding of the group. And with that, I just wanted to do a big shout out to the specific feedback that was provided, specifically by Jens Finkenhausen and Sheetal Kumar, who gave us concrete feedback. And I encourage to the participants of this specific research group to also provide kind of a similar kind of feedback, in that if you want something reflected on the draft, because it is a research working group document, if you can provide links either from academic peer review conferences on specific points that you're making, or from international human rights organizations, that would be completely great. Like, we love when there are opinions, but because we need to cite a lot of these specific points, it will be great if they are also backed up by academic research or by international human rights organizations. So with that, just to iterate, please check the new version of the draft, which I will post on a specific email. Provide us with feedback. If you have actionable research items or, again, publications that we should cite on the draft or we should expand upon it, that will be great. So with that, that's the presentation on this draft. And I will just open the queue in case there's someone who has like concrete points or questions about the draft. Any point to be raised about the draft? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so yes, so back then to the chair slides. Okay, so we got an update of the draft, as we just said, and now we're going to be going to the next talk, which is the talk by Jesse Lowell, who we're going to be talking about IEEE Technology Facilitated Interpersonal Control Working Group and Working Personal Modeling. And I'm going to allow you to share your slides, Jesse. Are you able to do so? You have to click on a button that says share slides.
I thought that you had all of my slides in the deck already, so I hadn't opened them.
Give me a second. Mallory, can you maybe share with them, because I might have to run in a few minutes.
Yeah, let me do
great.
that.
Yes,
for sure. And so Jesse, you just tell me when you would like me to advance them.
Okay.
I'm clicking. I love that the interface changes every single meeting. I can see my slides. I don't know if I can. Oh, okay, got it. Yep. Ta-da. You can see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Terrific. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name's Jessie. They, them, or she, her. I am a technology safety specialist at the National Network to End Domestic Violence, and I do some work in the IETF, the adult working group, detecting unwanted location trackers, and I'm also the chair of the subgroup of this particular IEEE working group that is working on persona modeling approaches. let's see, Mallory, if you can advance. So this particular working group, it is working on standards related to preventing and mitigating coercive technology facilitated interpersonal control. And it has several subgroups, of which persona modeling is one. I would say that it's still very much in early stages, in that nothing in particular is being produced yet. But the persona modeling subgroup is working on an informational document for the working group as a whole, basically to provide some support and assistance for other things that the working group might want to work on. Advance. So why persona modeling? And this is very related to the concept of, you know, threat modeling and the IPv threat model. And one thing that we have found at the National Network to End Domestic Violence on Safety Net, which is our tech safety team, we've found that a lot of tech companies, the cybersecurity industry in general, they just don't necessarily think about these particular risk models and threat models. They're focused on enterprise security. They're focused on privacy harms that are a little more generalized. And so we've just found that this particular aspect is not being considered. Increasingly, that's changing, but that's the idea here. We want to help it change more. So why persona modeling? So to understand and mitigate threats, at least in this particular area of understanding and mitigating threats, then we need to understand the threat actors. At least at a general level, we need to at least be able to come up with some kind of plausible ideas of how a threat actor might be behaving. And originally the subgroup was going to be about modeling abusive personas specifically, but we also then decided that in order to understand how threat actors and the targets interact, we also have to understand the targets. And so it can be useful to model, to model the personas of people who are potentially being abused or stalked as well, in order to be able to understand how these two types of actors might be interacting with each other, and how misuse of technology facilitates that. And like I said, traditional cybersecurity tends to be focused on enterprises and or nation states, and it looks a little different. There is some conceptual overlap, but in traditional cybersecurity, there tends to be an assumption, for example, that if someone has physical access to a device, like, it's all over, basically. And that's not good enough if you're trying to address an IPv threat model, because that happens all the time in an IPv context. Let's see, advanced slide. So some useful reference documents, and these are documents that have been shared within our working group. They have influenced the informational document for the rest of the working group that our subgroup is currently drafting. So some of these, like the e-safety guide for developers, which is from the Australian government, they are discussing some safety by design principles that are meant to apply to the gender-based violence context. And you can also see this with the IBM design principles to combat technology abuse, IBM on coercive control resistant design. And so some of these these are talking about principles, safety by design principles that apply in this context to keep in mind. And then some of these other links, they are more about, okay, well, in terms of practical, actionable modeling approaches, how do we do this? And so I provided a Carnegie Mellon link, and that is not specific to an IPV context, but it is evaluating, it's comparing and contrasting different methods of persona modeling. Like, this was something that we were looking at very early on to try to figure out, of these various established methods, like which ones potentially map the best onto an IPV context, onto a gender-based violence context. One of the ones that they mentioned was Lind & Go, which is a card-based approach to persona modeling, and that appealed to us. Not necessarily, I mean, it was good to see an example of Lind & Go, but like not specifically them, but just the idea that you could have cards with different attributes that could be combined or recombined to be able to describe different kinds of threat actors. We were also interested in their work because it was about because it was an approach to modeling privacy threats and not simply security threats, which obviously those overlap often a lot more than people think when they say that, when they posit those two things as opposites. But it's still nice to have something that's a little more directly applicable to many of the relevant situations. And then a paper that was very influential on me was this Models of Applied Privacy paper, the MAP paper, as I call it here. And that paper, it's aimed at enterprise security, but it has a very detailed description of how to, ways to taxonomize potential threats. And so these are, I would say these are a lot of the major pieces of source material that we've been looking at to influence our approach. Next slide. So how should we model personas? As I said, we liked the flexibility of card-based approaches. If anyone is unfamiliar with this, this is the idea behind a card-based approach would be that you have different card options for like different aspects of the persona, like maybe, what level of access do they have, or what their motive is. There's, it's flexible. There can be many ways to approach it, and then you can combine, you can pick a card from each attribute and combine them to create a persona, and then think about how, now you've sort of assembled a threat actor made of cards, and can think about what that threat actor might be able to do, what they might want to do. And because of this, it is very flexible, and it is useful for being able to taxonomize, which, like I said, the MAP paper was very useful to us, definitely to me, in thinking about taxonomies. I'm also one of the co-authors on the IETF Detecting Unwanted Location Trackers Threat Modeling Internet Draft, and I cite that paper in there as well. Modeling victim personas or not, again, this was something that we had not originally had in mind. We were thinking in terms of abusive personas, but it can actually be important to have some concept of what the target looks like in a situation like this, because the interactions between, attacker and victim, they have an influence on like what the dynamics of a situation look like. And so we've moved in the direction of, yeah, it might be a good idea to model these, which also was the direction that Maggie Delano and myself took with the IETF adult working groups threat modeling internet draft. Advanced slides. So, given that I've referenced this internet draft a couple of times, it also seems important to mention the differences between it, because if there's no difference, then why are two standards bodies working on the same thing? So the adult working group, it's specific to detecting unwanted location trackers and modeling threat actors and modeling attackers and victims in the context of unwanted location trackers. So it's a much narrower scope, whereas with the IEEE working group, it's a very broad scope. It's just technology facilitated interpersonal control, coercive control in general, and so that makes a difference, because it means that there are potential considerations that the IEEE working group may have to take into account for different types of technology that the adult working group for the IETF would not. But that also means that it has a shallower scope, because in the case of the adult working group, that's focused on a specific type of technology and has to take specific protocols into account, whereas because the IEEE working group is both so early stage and so broad, it's also much more general. It doesn't need to do that yet. And as I mentioned, the persona modeling subgroup of the IEEE's working group, it's our first project, essentially our first concrete thing that we are producing is an informational document for the larger working group to help steer and support some of the other work that's going on. Next slide. So conceptual crossover with IETF HRPC work. So I actually didn't know going into this that y'all are doing this very specific focus on some kind of IPV related document, and that I would say that's a very obvious conceptual crossover. So I actually think it's really cool to see that this working group, or this research group rather, is working on that, because I have noticed that human rights and gender-based violence are often treated as siloed worlds. The former is treated often as being about the relationship of the nation state to the individual, whereas the latter is treated as interpersonal. And so, so some differences there are some differences, but there's still also crossovers, because not all threat actors in what I will call traditional human rights that is more about the relationship between the state and the individual, or maybe the corporation and the individual, have nation state level resources. Like, there's sometimes an assumption in the human rights world, I think, that that what you're dealing with is an adversary with nation state level resources, but like, paramilitary groups, for instance, who may have lower resources, may not have their own like cybersecurity division. They may also be threat actors here, and they may also misuse technology in these ways. Or if you're talking about hate motivated violence, extremism motivated violence that may be carried out by like organized hate groups, extremist groups, organized gangs. These these actors may also not have nation state level resources, and so I think that the idea of examining threat models outside of the nation state one is of use, even when we're talking about human rights considerations that are what's often traditionally considered in the scope of human rights. Then my next point is basically a pointed comment about the way that these issues are often siloed. I think that gender-based violence, which is that term should not be taken to mean something along the lines of it's something men do to women. I mean, it is, but it's also, and someone of any gender can do it to any gender, but there's often a gendered component to that. For instance, someone abusing a partner because they don't fit within societal notions of masculinity or femininity, someone taking advantage of the fact that a partner is more masculine to believe that they'll get away with it. So gender-based violence should be understood as a human rights violation, breaking down those barriers between how we think about like state's conduct and the ways that the state might violate the rights of the individual, and also how individuals might violate each other's rights, and how individuals might use the state or vice versa in order to violate others' rights. In cases of, for instance, conflict-related sexual violence, that can be a case of a state or quasi-state entity using interpersonal control and interpersonal violence, gender-based violence, to achieve its means. Or if you have, for instance, a member of a law enforcement or police group who is abusing their partner, they may use the state's resources for that. So the lines between these can be very fuzzy. Gender-based violence often comes up in the context of war, conflict, political violence, state repression. And also, I think that the idea of the taxonomy-based, cards-based approach to threat modeling and to persona modeling, threat actor modeling, victim modeling, I think that can also have relevance in the broader human rights context that encompasses all of these things. And so with that, next slide. Yeah, that is what I have. I don't know if there's actually time for questions, but I wanted to have a slide to leave that open.
Thanks a lot. Jesse, yeah, we do have time for questions. So if folks wanted to queue up, you can do. Otherwise, we can move on our agenda. Really, really grateful to you, Jesse, for joining us. Thank you so much for the presentation. And if folks want
you for
to
having me.
actually read or follow the work in the IEEE, I wonder if you could drop a link in the chat, just in case. I know you're kind of attending IETF meetings now, and it's great to have you more consistently in this space. But you know, IEEE isn't not something that folks here may be following closely. So.
Mhm. Yeah, let me see if I can grab a link to. Should it be the working group description or
Yeah, I
the
think just a
standards
pointer.
internal?
So if
Okay.
somebody wanted to learn more, they could just keep that in mind. Really appreciate it. Okay, great. So I think there's no questions, so we'll invite Carl up. You should.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? Oh, yeah.
We can't see you yet.
Okay, let me upload my slides. Oh, no. How do I do that?
I think you can. I think you clicked the right button. I have to approve you. So if you can click it again, then I can do my
Okay.
click. How's that?
Oh, good. Okay, thanks.
Brilliant. Very big welcome to you, Carl. Thank you so much. I know you were in Dublin earlier this week, but you couldn't stay for Friday. So hopefully you've got to meet some of the people in the room. But yeah, we're really glad to have you here, and I will hand it over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mallory. Thank you very much for inviting me to the space and to Dublin. I was there yesterday, crazy, but now I'm in Brazil. Jet lag and very tired, but I'll do my best to maintain some level of English consistency here. Well, so I'm going to share a little bit about you with the work I do and from the perspective of feminist helplines from Latin America and how we are collectively responding to online gender-based violence. So it's a bit different from the other presentations in this session and the others that I've watched in Dublin, where people are bringing a specific findings in a study or in. Okay, this is my pigeon. That was not part of the presentation. Right? I think he wants to stay here. I'll just let him. Yeah, he really likes attention. So I will be sharing a little bit about my work from, he didn't sign up, but I think it can still count as one. So a little bit about me. So my name is Carl. I'm Brazilian, crazy bird lady, as you can find in live examples. Here is my contacts if you want to write me or know a bit more about my work. And right now I work in two organizations that I want to share a little bit. One is called Maria Lab, which is a feminist organization from Brazil. And we started around 10 years ago, more or less, as a collective. We were a feminist hacker collective that was very interested in discussing the intersections between gender and technology. And I think it's important to note contextually that as most civil rights organizations dedicated to digital security, we started as complete voluntary base. And very quickly, we received a lot of requests for help from feminists, from LGBTQ people, from activists, organizations that was facing digital threats. So nowadays, our work is 100% focused on responding to these digital attacks, but exclusively for civil society. And Maria Lab is composed of very diverse people. So we have women like myself who have a technical background. So I study information security in college, and I work in companies like most of you on the beginning of my career. And but other girls had other backgrounds, and we really respect that, and we want to keep this intersectionality alive in our work. So it's very important to note, even though we are a hacker organization that deal with digital security, as it is common in most organizations like ours, not every member is technically had a technical background. The other organization I'm part of, still Bird Team, quite present, is an organization called DDP, which is Digital Defenders Partnership. And it's a global organization that supports teams in most global South places. So I'm part of the Latin America team. And the difference between the work of DDP and Maria Lab does is that DDP allows me to work longer term with one organization. So in DDP, I usually work with one or two organizations per year. So we have more time to develop risk assessments, protocols, threat analysis, and actually implement the protocol. So it's a very interesting work that not many organizations do, because many organizations are very focused on attending only the incident or only a single workshop. And gladly with DDP, we can do a longer accompaniment. So just to start off, oh my God. So just to start, I have this amazing quote from Daniela, which is a friend of mine that works in Maria Lab. And we do believe it's very important for this connection between feminism and technology. It was always important, but now, after COVID and everything we've seen, a lot of integrants from the civil society have migrated to digital technologies that they were not meant for their kind of work, and most of them don't understand these tools in depth. So we feel it's very important to bring this kind of topic in both places, right? To bring technology to feminist spaces and to bring feminists to technology spaces. This was pretty much the goal of Maria Lab when it started, and we feel it's more important than ever to have this kind of multi-actor space like this one. I also like to share a little bit about the pillars of my work, of our work, and also very interesting to hear from Jessie that they're developing methodologies, right, and developing frameworks to work with security from civil society, because that's pretty much what we do. We understand that to address digital security, we need to address it from a feminist methodology. And we do that by promoting digital security as part of self-care and collective care. We do that for many reasons. One of them being that if you don't adapt methodology, in my experience, it doesn't work. Like, you cannot come to a human rights organization of any size, of any country, any context, and try to apply exactly what we do for the companies, for the industry. It would just not work. Often doesn't work in the companies either, huh? But it's very necessary for us to develop and adapt methodologies to speak to this public. So these are 4 pillars that are always present in our work. First of all, we don't work with digital security alone. It always integrated with a holistic approach, especially if in your context from Latin America. Like, it doesn't make sense to talk to an activist to have like extreme digital protections if she's been threatened by the police, or she's been threatened by an intimate partner, someone who has physical access to her devices and to her. So we need other kinds of plans and strategies. Also, the second point relates to that. Since this issue of gender violence is beyond technology, right? It existed before. It was not created by technology. It also cannot be solved by technology alone. Now, of course, we are here because we believe that technology can and should help these people to enhance their voice, enhance their fight. But we must all acknowledge that technical solution alone will not fix the bigger issue. So we always promote the usage of technology and protection and care plans. And protection and care plans, of course, are individualized. I cannot just go to an organization or to an activist and say, here, we already did it for you, just apply this and you'll be safe. Obviously, everything needs to be quite customized to the person's context, threat actors, and etc. Yeah. And also, we do promote free, open source, and autonomous technologies. So we always try to show new tools to people and new ways that they can utilize these tools. But we are not restricted to that. We understand that a lot of people are reliant on big tech. Traditional technology, and so we also so we do both. I mean, we teach people how to get out of Google, but we also teach people how to better configure their Google's accounts so they can be secure, right? And it's very important for us also to work with an accessible language, and to do that, we really ask for help of teaching frameworks like popular education and feminist intersectionality, like frameworks of teaching most specifically. And we're always learning and trying to improve this kind of methodologies from these pillars. Okay, so just brought some definitions here, but I think they've been discussed a little bit by Jesse, and also in the draft, in the IPV draft, it does bring some really nice definitions of gender violence facilitated by technology, and IPV is one of them, right? It's a bit more narrow in scope, but what we work is it can either be online gender-based violence when it is an attack motivated in a digital tools that happens inside an online digital tool, or facilitated by technology, if we're talking about a stalkerware or any kind of tracking device. And also just to no, just to maybe say it again, what Jesse mentioned, that online gender violence, does not mean that it's only committed against women. We also include in this umbrella the entire LGBTQ community, and it is a violence that's necessarily crossed by other kinds of inequalities, not only gender, but race, ethnicity, social class. So it comes from the idea that there is an inequality of power inside that dynamic. And of course, technology didn't create that, and technology alone will not solve it, but technology has the power to aggravate or amplify these violences. One of the ways that civil society is responding to threats against civil society is by trying to learn how to apply digital forensics for these activists, especially these in the slides are some of the organizations that have started these ever since 2016, 2017. There's more and more groups who are trying to educate themselves and how to better apply forensics to detect these kind of targeted attacks against human rights defenders. And this has been very prominent, like it's getting more and more attention from the media, from founders, from funders, from and human rights activists in general. I mean, it's a topic that's getting more and more attention, mostly because of the Pegasus project, which is a joint effort from these organizations to expose the usage of this super malware, this governmental malware named Pegasus. I expect most of you have heard of, but it is a malware developed by an Israeli company that can infect mobile devices, Android and iPhone, with zero click. So it doesn't rely on the user's failure or the user's to manipulate user to install it. And it has been proven that this malware has been used in many countries to target civil society, journalists, lawyers, activists, and state enemies of state. And many reports have been published in the tool, and also civil society, Amnesty Tech, Assistant Lab have also developed some tools to help identify if you are one of the victims. Also, Pegasus is not the only one, but that's a little bit where all this attention was getting for this subject in particular. But I think it's very important to understand that these organizations don't work alone. And for us to get to a big Pegasus like scandal, a big spyware scandal, there is this whole chain of support around the victim. So this is a little graphic that we're trying to do to summarize this process. So we have here like a victim, a human rights defender who has a suspicion, right? I think my phone is being used to monitor me, to spy me. And then she comes to a person that does this first response. We're calling the first responder, right? And this person is someone that's a bit closer to the victim, like maybe someone that she knows. It might be someone like me who goes to a lot of places to do digital security workshops. It might be someone that works in a security helpline. I don't know, someone that is going to help these victims with first steps. And the very first step is to do a risk assessment. So very interesting, the things that Jesse mentioned, that context to identify the which actors we're talking about. So of course that when you are discussing about developing protocols that will be used globally, the scope must be very big. But when we are talking about specific incident, we must really understand the context of that activist, also where she is, like who she is, and what she's been doing, like to try to understand if this may be motivated politically, if there's been motivated by her agenda, if it can be also if she's a woman or an LGBTQ person who is also an activist. There's also this double threats, like is this because it's a non-conforming gender person, or is this because she's doing this work? So a lot of layers that we need to work, and also technical layers, like we as first responders need to do a quick triage to understand if this concern makes sense. A lot of people are motivated by fear and by this irresponsible way that media promotes these super viruses. So a lot of panic also makes people believe in myths, like my phone is overheating. I hear strange things when I call someone. So also I'll work to do this first triage and detect, okay, this looks like a misconfiguration of Google accounts. This looks like nothing, like it could be a hardware problem. Or if we detect that there is something suspicious, or there is something that could perhaps Apple notification saying that this person could be victim to mercenary spyware, for example, that would be a big, okay, this is something we need to look more in depth. And then if this is detected, then there is these experts, these digital forensic experts, who can belong to any of these organizations, or can be a third party that was hired by the victim, or any individual that has the ability to perform deeper digital forensics. And of course, there is a report, and then the decision of what to do with this, which isn't always the same, right? When we are talking about civil rights, not necessarily the person who wants to go to court, she might. Not necessarily the person who wants it to be public, she might. So a lot of other actors here, journalists, lawyers, and other, just this chain can go much bigger. But just to try to summarize, this is pretty much how this, who is involved in this process. Right? So one of the first responders, so in here, no? One of the first responders, as I said, could be someone like me, or an organization like Maria Lab that receives a lot of reports of incidents. And actually, we decided during the pandemic, since, I don't know, the whole world was crazy, so we decided, okay, let's take a deep breath and try to systematize the way that we can help these people. So created digital helplines was for us, and for many other organizations like us, a way to create an organized way to answer for these digital incidents. So we take the idea of an IT help desk, And the ideas, the tools, I mean, inside Maria Lab, we have a feminist helpline called Maria da Ajuda, and we use software to document our cases. That is a modified version of Zamad, which is, of course, an open source software designed for helplines. So it is the idea that we can support these cases in similar ways that an IT help desk can support its users. And there's some interesting definitions on this kind of civil society helplines, if anyone's interested. And okay, but of course, I think it's something I really like to point out. The big majority of cases, like 90% of cases we receive, are not technically advanced. Okay, there's so many other things involved in a gender violence case. It's such a complex issue that usually how we deal with it is more connected to popular education, so more connected to this work of, I don't like this word, but like empowering the user, like educating the user, let the user make its own choices. And it's more of a digital care practices than necessary to analyze and to investigate digital advanced threats. So the most common attacks that we receive are related to hacked accounts, which is why most helplines also have a direct contact with Meta or Google or Apple to better to help speed up the process of recovering accounts or taking down abusive content and stuff like that. But a lot of incidents happen from stalking or monitoring hacked accounts of all kinds, right? So also monitoring social media using OSINT techniques, open information, open data, and this is used a lot to stalk, to monitor. And this is particularly I would say interesting, the lack of a better word, but when it is a woman activist, often this is used not to target only her or to harm only her, but a lot of times this is extended to her family, to her children, for example. So this kind of open data, intentionally or no, they can do a lot of damage, especially to the psychosocial aspects of the abuse. Also, we see apps using for spyware, using for spy functionalities. So here on top, we have three of the most known-use softwares in Latin America. But there are so many others. We're talking about parental control apps, spy your spouse apps, and this kind of shitty spywares that are usually very cheap, very affordable for regular people. You don't need a lot of technical knowledge to use them, but you do need physical access to the device, which, as Jesse mentioned, in certain contexts might be extremely unlikely, like if we're talking about server security, right? But in cases of intimate partner violence, it's very likely that the person will have access to your devices. This is even more probable depending on your context. So in Latin America, most people, they only have one phone. Some families share the same phone. Most people, even the ones working professionally with human rights, they often don't have a computer, or if they have one computer that they must use for everything, like work, leisure, children homework, So it does get very difficult to talk about, segregating devices when we are in this kind of context. So we do get these apps being used as stalkerware, used to stalk and monitor people, and also other kinds of malicious apps that are installed from trusted sources, most likely from phishing or spear phishing, which is directed to people working in these contexts. Just a second. Thank you. And also unwanted access to devices or files, which in case of gender violence, it has this added depth of revenge porn and everything related to unwanted sexual content. But also, if we're talking about Latin America context, there's a lot of device seizure by the police or by hostile authorities. Of course, here I brought you some, go away, pigeon, some general data from my experience, but we are going to publish a report next year, Maria Lab and some other feminist helplines. We're teaming up to bring some aggregated data. I also like to point out, for the interest of research, that it's very difficult to create specific data about these cases, because it's very hard to find common categories. Even within very similar groups, we have this work to create common categories and common taxonomy to improve research. But there is a research that was published last year by Internews that's very interesting. It has a global trends in digital security for civil society, and it has a Brazil chapter to anyone who's interested in knowing more. Okay, try to speed up a little. So, of course, the one is, say, digital forensics and gender violence. Everyone thinks about stalker, which is a problem, of course. But there's some interesting resources there to anyone who wants to know more, even though stalkerware is an issue, and those spywares, those softwares being used to spy on people have serious human rights implications. But this is not, again, this is not the majority of cases we have. Actually, a lot of time, what is used to spy people, so it's used as a stalkerware, is actually ready-made tools or dual-use tools. So, for example, Find My Android, or some backup sync tools with the cloud that the attacker has access to. So we see a lot of misconfiguration, and also I think this is a reflex. And and now it's my opinion. I'm not saying this based on any research, but I do think that the fact that the default configuration many times, especially in Android devices and Windows computers, they tend to aggregate a lot of data behind one digital account. And a lot of times people don't know that. People often, they don't know how to secure this account properly. So the fact that the default of these tools are aiming at concentrating a lot of data, it's actually, to this field, I think, way more concerning than the stalkerware itself alone. But this is a personal opinion. And also the way that we are trying to work in this field is through this study that we are doing, that what we're calling feminist digital forensics. That's pretty much the idea to improve the response of these first responders. So we want to work with several digital helplines from Latin America, and actually try to come up with similar procedures to do the triaging process, to know which organizations we can refer to. So pretty much make this network of organizations and activists that are working with this to have better understanding of what digital forensics can do for us, and more specifically, more importantly, to the victim, because what the victim wants must always take precedent. So we as a field perhaps might need and might want to publicize, or might need and might want to collect evidence, like the judicial evidence, to present in the court, but that might not be what the victim wants. So it's also very important that there is space within this community for us to discuss not only one correct course of action, but always make sure that to put the victim in the center. And this is very important for our methodologies, right? What we are protecting essentially is people. So So yeah, our opinions as researchers, analysts, etc., must come second to them. And why is this relevant to you, to IETF? Well, that's a big question. No, I will try to connect some dots here. So I think there's been some very interesting drafts that can potentially bridge the gap between IETF and the community of developing standards with human rights activists, the IPV, the DOUT, the work of Jesse, and this RFC that was published on human rights protocols consideration. Very interesting work there. Kudos to PTG and the Diversity Fund to bring more people into these spaces. But also, I'd like to point out, I think I've talked too much, but I'll try to be quick. Also, a couple other notes. I think that the big spyware issue that civil society is facing and the whole society is facing exists. It is a technology issue. Like it's not only of civil society or only for these companies that make these super viruses to sell for governments. I mean, these super viruses only exist because there is this whole insecurity market related to zero-day vulnerabilities, exploits that are being sold to the highest bidder. So big techs are worried about this, right? Apple, Google, they are worried about this because these companies are using their vulnerabilities, sometimes unknown vulnerabilities, to bring harm to the users. So they are funding civil society, their projects to help improve the response of civil society. But as it is pointed out, it's not enough. Also because these big tech companies, they often dodge the responsibility back to civil society. So Apple might notify you and say, oh, you're probably been a victim to a big, scary malware like Pegasus. But if you need help, go to the civil society organization. Right? And another interesting commentary about vulnerability, about threats to civil society and protocols is that historically in Latin America, there's been some serious abuse of the GSM and telephony protocols, and also Bluetooth, which is known to which is also known to be abused with trackers and similar devices. But Latin America, Brazil in particular, have been known as the country that has most, I forgot the English word, but like listening devices on people's numbers. So we really like doing that to people. And there's some still going on. I have two quick examples that if anything else will bring some entertainment to you because Brazilian politics is a mess. One of them is the eavesdropping. Thank you, Rahel. Yes, with Brazilian police, Brazilian government really likes eavesdropping people's phones, and there's also other attacks related to the weakness of the GSM and most specifically to the SS7 routing protocols. This was a very famous one because it involved the hacking of a Telegram account of a very important judge in Brazil. It's called Moro. Yeah, wiretapping. Thank you. Yeah, don't know if you heard the story, but Moro was the judge that was behind the car wash case. That is the case that eventually put the President Lula in prison. And this unknown hacker, just contact Glenn Greenwald one day and say, hey, I just hacked the Telegram account of Moro and I have all these documents that you should see. And at first, no one knew how he did it, but very quickly it became obvious that it was, well, Moro wasn't a very careful person, so he didn't have second factor authentications, and Telegram has an option for SMS authentication, so for the web platform. So it was a very simple attack, technically speaking, like the person was trying to log into Moro's account on Telegram web and use this vulnerability of SMS to receive, actually it was a voicemail, to receive the Telegram code by voicemail. After that, this was such a big scandal that Telegram removed the option for you to receive the token by voicemail. And another very recent, very ugly example on how Latin America governments are using the known vulnerabilities of these protocols. Like, none of that is new from a technical standpoint, but this last case is interesting because it happened like a couple years ago during Bolsonaro's government. For those who don't know him, Bolsonaro is our Trump-like dictator that was like president of Brazil for 4 years. And during his government, it was bought a software called First Mile, developed by an Israeli company called Cognite. And this was a software that could track the location of anyone from a cell number. So it really bypassed the necessity that Brazilian law enforcers have to go through due judicial process to get this information from ISPs, which happens today, right? We already have this procedure in place. But what this set of the government did was to create basically its own parallel tracking device. And it was proved that it was used to spy on a large number of people, including look how absurd it is, but Bolsonaro's son was being investigated for tax evasion. Yeah, I think that's the word. And one of the persons being monitored by this device was the auditor that was investigating Bolsonaro's son. So clearly a very illegal usage of governmental state-sponsored technology here. So these are just some examples. So I think it's is related to protocols. Of course, nothing new here. Everyone knows that GSM, SS7 protocols have these vulnerabilities, but it's important for us to understand that these have real-life impacts on human rights, especially in countries where democracy is a bit thin at the moment. So that's it. That's what I wanted to bring. And I hope it was enjoyed. And I'm sorry to speak too much, but let me know if you have some questions.
No, thanks, Carl. We really appreciate having you. I see one person in the queue. This is an invitation for anyone else, remote or in person, to come to the mic, as they say, via the queue. So Andrew, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Andrew Camping speaking. Thank you. Really interesting presentation. I guess the takeout for me from both the presentation, but also some of the comments in the chat that was happening simultaneously, was there's a lot of technology that can both be very helpful to attackers, if you will, different types of attackers, and or beneficial to the victims, depending on how it's sort of used or repurposed. I know the conversation in the chat was around, whether parental controls are helpful or not. We don't need to delve into detail. I'm sure you can prove both instances of that, depending on your perspective. Similarly, I've seen things like certainly in the CSAM space, so attackers using end-to-end encrypted messaging systems to find and distribute CSAM materials. I think from what I've seen from this presentation, it's very much the same case here. Point being, I think it makes it difficult because there isn't a silver bullet to fix this, sadly. Which makes it harder. But I think the important first step, which I think, Carl, you've really helped with it, is at least raising awareness of where the challenges are, so there can be a much better, more informed debate. So thanks again for the presentation.
Sure, I just push back on the notion that they're equal, that one is intentionally disrupting the security model of another in order to control them. And then the other, in the case of end-to-end encryption, is making the endpoint more secure. But yeah, dual use conversations are fun and nuanced. Doesn't look like there's anyone else in the queue. We also have exhausted our agenda for today. We don't have any more presentations. So I think that concludes the Human Rights Protocol Considerations Research Group session at IETF 121, and probably for a lot of folks, the whole meeting, right? This week, we're one of the last slots. So I hope that you've had a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you all so much, and have a good weekend and a nice trip back. Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much, Carl. Yes, Colin, go ahead.
Just thank you to Mallory, to the speakers. I think this was a fantastic session.
Agreed. Yeah, thanks so much to the speakers. And Sophia couldn't be here towards the end, but also thanks to her for all the work she's done on our draft. That is, by the way, a research group draft. And we'll be following up on the list with comments or any reviews for that document. And thanks in advance for folks who do that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.